Welcome into the newest episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. Glad to have all of you here joining us for episode 73 of the pod. It's a fun time as we are covering not one, not two, but three episodes of the third season of Bad Batch, episodes 6, 7, and 8. As we did take a hiatus from podcasting last week, so good to be back here again for another episode this week after being away for 2 weeks. So we've got lots to talk about today, not just Bad Batch, but a ton of news. So before we get into all of that, I want to give you a quick reminder that if you're not yet subscribed to the Hot Hangout channel over on YouTube, check us out there for the video version of every single podcast and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're getting closer and closer to 400 subscribers over there. So shout out to all of the nearly 400, the 393 of you who are subscribed to the channel. Also sub over there for more reactions to the latest Star Wars shows, including the Bad Batch and others coming soon. Additionally, you can contact us via email at hothangout@gmail.com with your Star Wars related questions, and we'd love to showcase them here on the pod and discuss them as well. The Hoth Hangout podcast is also findable wherever you get your pods, including Spotify and Apple. And if you're listening on a platform that allows you to leave a review, leave a 5-star review on the podcast. We would appreciate it very much, and it does also allow it to be more easily discovered by others as well. Hoth Hangout is findable on the socials, whether it be TikTok, Instagram, or X, at Hoth Hangout on each of those. And as we debuted in episode 72 of the podcast 2 weeks ago, we do now have a Discord server for the Hoth Hangout community. The link for the Discord server will be in the show notes of this podcast as well. Definitely encourage you to check it out for a fun community of people who love talking about Star Wars. If you're interested, once again, the link will be in the show notes of this episode. And to tease our question of the week this week, going into what would be episode 9 of the Bad Batch next week, our teasing of the question is: will Asajj Ventress be in episode 9 of the Bad Batch? That's going to be part of our discussion today. And before we get into any of the myriad of news that we've got or our discussion on the Bad Batch, Joey, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good. I am ready. I missed hanging out last week with you, Ben. You went to go see some of the sports balls
I did.
over by you. So hope you had a fun time. But yeah, we're gonna have a good time here today. Uh I don't know if we make it under an hour. I'm a little concerned. I know we said a few weeks ago we told Gibbo that we would try to stay under an hour for the rest of the season. So I don't know if I would put my money on us on this one.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tight one. We've got like 4 pieces of news. There was tons of Star Wars stuff going on, not to mention 3 episodes that we're gonna try to cover in today's podcast. So if we end up going about 65, 70 minutes, I wouldn't be shocked, but we'll do our best to get under an hour. We'll see how it goes. By the way, March Madness starts tomorrow. Happy March Madness to everyone out there, fellow basketball fans. We should do like some sort of Star Wars bracket at some point in the next
Oh, that
couple
would be
weeks. But
fun.
yeah, let us know down in the comments of the YouTube video or anywhere on the socials if you have any ideas for a some sort of Star Wars bracket we should do that would be fun. Maybe characters going head to head against one another or something like that. So, anyways, happy March Madness to everyone. Joey, do you want to just go ahead and hop into some of our news for this week?
Yeah, sounds
'Cause
good to me.
I know we got a lot, some
We
of
got
which we covered in previous episodes too, but, um, so I guess the first piece of news, a game which you and I both picked up and both of us have played it, since its, I guess, re-release or remastered release coming out last week, was the Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection. Not only Star Wars Battlefront, but also Star Wars Battlefront 2 coming together as a package deal, which was available for $35 on Steam and is still currently available for that price. Was released with some critical reception, you might say. The initial reviews on this were extremely negative. Not necessarily because of gameplay, because you knew it wasn't going to be amazing because it's like a 2004 or 5 game originally.
right.
But when they launched the game, there were only 3 servers available for over 10,000 people. And
And
if you
each
don't
each
know,
server was only holding 64 players.
yes. So, you got what? Like under 200 spots for 10,000 people. You can see why people would leave some negative reviews. If you look the game up currently, it has a 19% positive review. So if
Hmm.
that tells you anything, for what it's worth, I played it for 2 hours. I was like, man, I feel like I'm 10 years old sitting in my friend's basement playing this on the original Xbox. It was great. I had a
Hmm.
fun time. Yes, it was janky. Yes, it was nowhere near perfect. Did I really care? Not really. I was having
Right.
fun.
And
Yeah.
here's the thing, something like this really does appeal to the nostalgia portion of the gaming world. This isn't going to be a perfect game. I wish they would have had more servers at launch. I feel like they kind of missed the boat on that one. I don't know. I don't know what happens there. I don't know how that happens. You just only have the 3 servers up. So I'm assuming they have got maybe double that, maybe 6 servers. I'm not quite sure.
No, so I played it. I didn't actually play it until 5 days after release. So I think
Okay.
I missed like the worst part of there not being
Mm.
availability in the servers. Because when I got on, there was like 15.
Oh, look at that.
So there's definitely more, and there was only 2 that were full. So I
Okay.
think the rush has subsided. There's
Right.
far less people playing, but there's now more servers.
Yeah.
However, there is still a lot of lag associated with the game. If you come from a video game background, sort of, you're familiar with the concept of hit reg, aka like where you're pointing your blaster is actually where your bullet is firing in the
Mm.
game. That does not really exist in this game. It's kind of hit or
It is,
hit.
yeah.
It is literally hit or miss if you're going to hit the thing you're aiming at.
Yeah, which
Be
makes sense if you're like the stormtroopers, right? But
Yeah, it's all in character, you know what I mean? So, and not anywhere so far from a perfect game, but I just like you said, it's about the nostalgia for me, and I still enjoyed playing
yes.
it. So, and they are bug fixing this still and sending out patches for what it's worth. So, still available for 35 bucks over on Steam if you want to pick it up. Check it out. It's not an amazing game, but it's a nostalgic game, and I recommend it. Next piece of news we got is about I guess I wouldn't call it a re-release, but maybe just a re-update of something we thought we might not be getting, which we are now going to be getting. Patty Jenkins, which was originally slated to direct the Rogue Squadron movie. I believe this was initially announced back in like 2020, I want to say, or maybe even 2019, and was slated for a 2023 release. It was canceled the year before in 22 and has since been since Patty is no longer going to be directing Wonder Woman 3, which is the reason she was putting aside Rogue Squadron in 22. Wonder Woman 3 was kind of, I guess, not it was taken off or put on the chopping block rather
Mm.
by Warner Brothers and is no longer in production. So she is going full force into Rogue Squadron. And I'm pretty excited about this. I would say this wasn't one that was ever on the top of my list that I was interested in seeing. But having said that, I think it is one that I think is gonna fly under the radar. No pun intended. Um,
Oh,
so
it better
much
be intended.
yeah, yeah.
I
So
don't.
much yeah, yeah. So much to the point I think this is gonna come out and people are maybe the average Star Wars fan is going to think, yeah, may see it, may not see it, but I think it's going to do well as a
Yeah,
film. Yeah. Are you excited about Rogue Squadron
absolutely.
coming out?
Yeah, I love Patty Jenkins. Her direct. I loved her. I loved Wonder Woman. She did Wonder Woman, right? The first one as well.
I think she did I don't know if she did
She
both
did
of
the
them,
first
but
one.
I think
Yeah.
she definitely did the first one. I'll look it up while you're
Yeah.
talking.
So I think I'm excited to see this, and I forget if this is the one where no, that was another show. But either way, more Star Wars. I'm going to watch it. Dogfights in space. I'm always gonna be for it. I mean, if you even look at just the poster here that we have for Rogue Squadron, just super cool with the X-wing, and I'm here for it. I'm not gonna pretend that this isn't something that I'm gonna like. I think I'm gonna like this a lot. I'm curious of the story. I don't really know too much exactly what's going to be happening through it, but I think, and you and I mentioned this a little bit before we started recording. This is another movie now, though. This is going to be
Mhm.
another movie that we added to the slate of movies. This will be number 5, I believe, that has been announced in the past, since Celebration last year.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I'm interested in seeing how they're going to spread these out too, because we're definitely not getting a movie this year. Probably next year, maybe Christmas next year or end of the year next year. So, is this kind of going to bring us into, I can't even believe I'm going to say this, like 2030? You know what I mean? Like with all of these movies, one a year possibly. And that's exciting for me for Star Wars, but I'm hearing Liam Neeson right now. He's saying this is too much. This is too much.
This is too much Star Wars for me. That was
The
a little
Sean,
bit too
the
much
Sean
Sean
Connery.
Connery. My Liam Neeson and my Sean Connery are almost the same. Okay. Do you think Luke Skywalker is gonna be in this movie? You
Sure,
think we get
let's do it. Let's
a
do
deep fake Luke
deep
Skywalker again?
deep fake. Yeah, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I
Anything's
mean,
on
'cause
anything can happen now.
yeah, I mean, for those that don't know Rogue Squadron, I guess we should mention if
Hmm.
you're, I guess maybe not an original trilogy, or maybe the original trilogy wasn't your entrance into Star Wars. Rogue Squadron was the kind of the starfighter squadron that Luke founded during the original trilogy. So, just for a little bit of background on what this
Was
show
there
might be about.
an EU book called Rogue Squadron or something like that? Or
I want to say yes, and I know there was a video game too. I'm pretty
ah,
sure. But I think there was a EU book as well. That sounds pretty familiar. That could be something that our knowledgeable listeners probably could help us out with. I'm sure, but yeah, this it's largely based off of, I think, EU, and maybe even this game that I'm thinking of.
hmm.
At least I hope I'm thinking of the right thing. That sounds, because I remember seeing cover art for it. Yeah, an arcade style flight action game, which originally came out for the Nintendo 64 in 1998.
Wow.
Yeah, which I think was based off of that EU novel, like you said. So
And they probably had only had 3 servers back then as well.
yeah, 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 or less. Who knows? But anyways, this is coming to theaters at a time we do not know. Like you said, this one, who knows? This could be at least 3, 4 years away, maybe even more. But yeah, in addition to Rogue Squadron and the Mandalorian and Grogu movie slated to come out, I think at the end of next year, and then also the new Daisy Ridley film, the Dawn of the Jedi movie, and the Filoni verse movie. So yeah, 5 in total coming to theaters anywhere between like the next 2 to 7 years, probably
Hmm.
something like that. So cool announcement in that regard. Another Star Wars film on the horizon to look forward to, especially for fans of the original trilogy. This is the big one from this past week. If anyone has not checked out Joey and I's reaction to the Acolyte trailer, that quick video is up over on the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel. Our 4 minute reaction and quick review to the Acolyte trailer, which came out earlier this week. Um, the biggest thing surrounding this, which is I think something that kind of you and I didn't pick up on the first day or two that it was out, and now certainly I think we're more aware of it, is that it was met with a lot of mixed reception, to the point where this video currently has more dislikes than likes on YouTube,
Hmm.
which was surprising because, I mean, you and I watched this together for the first time. I think after watching it, we both thought, "Wow, I'm stoked for this. I can't wait." It's a period of the Star Wars universe that is largely unexplored, definitely within canon. It's more explored within Legends and EU stuff, of course, but and becoming more explored with the High Republic novels. But one that we're super excited to see on the small screen in this series. And I don't know, I was really excited and then kind of bummed when I saw all the negative reaction to it, if I'm
Yeah.
being honest. I could go on a little bit of a rant, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that first.
I
Just
was
on the negative reaction, I
Yeah, I
guess.
mean, I was perusing through the Twitterverse and came across this particular tweet saying that this video was getting more thumbs down than thumbs up. I'm like, is this the same video that I watched? And I understand people have their opinions, and if this is genuinely something that you don't like, then I understand. But in the same way, I'm like, what were we looking for? What were people looking for in this? What was it? A 2-minute trailer? So
Hmm.
I'm just curious. Like, what were the things that they really missed on these 2 minutes of? an 8 episode series, you know, that, you know, so, and a big thing for me, and you know, I we have not read through all the High Republic stuff, you know, let's be honest. But even not reading all of that, you know, we were still excited. I can't imagine the high, and I would be interested the people who have read the High Republic books, how they have received it. Are they also part of that population that is not very excited, or are they like completely on the side of I am so ready to see this in live action. I have been reading these books for a few years, and you know, through these 3 phases, are they part of that population too, or are they part of the population that are more like very excited like we are? Yeah, so it kind of blows my mind a little bit that there was that. I mean, to the point where there's more dislikes than likes. That's shocking to me. So I'm with us being on the side of like, oh yeah, we were super excited. This is more Star Wars, and we just saw a lot of cool characters. And I don't know if there's specific things that people are looking at. I did look at some things that were people were being upset about, but I still it still didn't resonate with me.
Yeah, I'm agreed in that. Let me preface this by saying when this show was announced, I thought, wow, that's like arguably the thing I'm most excited for. So going in with the understanding that this is something I've been waiting to see the trailer for, I watched it and I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm excited for it. I'm more excited for it after watching the trailer than I was before watching the trailer. And so let me kind of, I guess I'll speak or try to speak to both sides. I think there's people who are, well, okay. I'm gonna try not to
Tread
go too,
tread lightly, my
too
friend.
yeah, I'm gonna try not to go too out of bounds here. Um, for people that have listened to our podcast, like you know that I don't really love the sequels, and I think that's a fair amount of the Star Wars fan base nowadays. And there's people that take that way too far, and they hate on the movies. It's, I mean, I guess it's okay to hate on the movies, but they go take it even further. They're like this actor, that actor,
Sure.
you know, so it's okay to not like the sequels. Like I am certainly not a fan of episode 9 in particular. I think when you take the approach of anything that Disney makes is automatically terrible because Disney makes it, I think you kind of just like you don't even approach it with the open mind that maybe it could be good. Like I would love for this to introduce kind of this period of time in Star Wars where we get all sorts of different High Republic stuff. I mean, this is one of my favorite time periods in Star Wars. And so I want this show to succeed. I want it to do well because I love Star Wars. And so to approach a show like this with the pessimism after not having even seen it, and I wouldn't even just say pessimism. I think it's okay to be pessimistic. I think just outright negativity, you know,
Right, yeah.
it's like, you know, I don't know what you really want from this, like, and then the thing I was gonna speak to on the other side of it is the only complaint that I can somewhat resonate with is that I've seen people saying that, especially in The Phantom Menace, for example, there's all this talk that it's like, the Sith have been gone for a millennia, is what Mace
Mm-hmm.
Windu says, and Darth Maul says to Darth Sidious, "At last we'll return. At last we'll have our revenge," hinting at the fact it's been forever since the Sith have been around. And so this show takes place roughly 100 years before the Phantom Menace, meaning that maybe they were around. So,
Yeah, right.
you know, there's a little bit of incongruence in it on the surface level. It appears, you know, of course, we don't know who this lightsaber wielder is. We don't know if they're a Sith. We don't really know a lot about the story. So, all that to say, that's my rant. I just I don't think it's fair to go into this show with the mindset of it's going to be bad. Now, if we watch the first 3 episodes and we're like, "Ooh, this is I'm not really,"
Yeah.
you know, if we're, like, getting some Book of Boba Fett vibes, we're like, then that's fair, you know, we can judge it based on that,
Right,
but
yeah.
I think to enter into the conversation of the Acolyte with an, overwhelmingly negative mindset is a disservice to the potential that this show could have. Not
Right.
saying it will have, but I think we have to give it a chance as Star Wars fans, so That's my 2 cents
Right.
for what it's worth.
I'd be interested in what Disney's thinking like right now because they see these numbers. They
Yeah,
they know what's going on as well. So I'd be curious what the directors and the actors and just what they're thinking now. They're like, are they thinking the same as us, or are they and I've seen this so many times too, like, oh, it's just another money grab, and I'm like, what? you know I mean, we're
yeah,
to be fair, this is a business. They're trying to continue to, but this is a story that has never been told. It would be one thing if we kept, if anything is more of a money grab, I would feel like the sequel trilogy would be more of one, where they're just trying to bring back Luke, bring back
right.
Han, bring back, like after so many years. But with this is a totally new story, new
Yeah,
directors, everything. So I feel that if we give this a chance, I hope I'm right. Like you said, this could be a Book of Boba Fett type thing, but to judge all of this over a couple of minutes of chopped up trailer footage, I don't know. I can't get on board with that.
yeah, yeah, I mean, that's a good point you bring up with the sequels. Like, this show has no legacy characters that, you know, your childhood view of could be tarnished or whatever. Like, it's all brand new characters. It's all new Jedi, for crying out loud. I was looking at the cast list of this show. It
Mhm.
was like Jedi, 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 Jedi. I mean, like, everyone in this show is in the Jedi Order, it seems like. I think it's gonna be so cool to get to see that perspective of kind of the Order, and I'm really excited for this. This is the show I've been most looking forward to, and nothing I've seen in the trailer makes me less excited than I already was. So,
Right.
what it's worth, side note, there's only 8 episodes. That was definitely a bit of a bummer, but, um oh, and then the last point I wanted to make on this, the director, the show creator for The Acolyte describes it, and I don't know how this makes me feel, to be honest. This is the thing that makes me a little bit hesitant. She describes the show as Frozen, like the children's movie about the snow and Let It Go. Frozen meets Kill Bill.
Yeah.
I don't really know what that means. Um, but okay.
I feel maybe it's because I'm thinking, what we already have from this era, and I think of like young Jedi adventures. So
Right. Yeah.
if we're gonna like bring those two things together, because I mean that is very much like a Frozen type of like the Force was the friends we made along the way. That's what that felt like, right?
Yeah.
But then you saw this trailer. It was very. I mean, even the poster itself, it was like a Jedi hilt, or I'm sorry, lightsaber hilt with like blood on it.
Yeah.
And that gives
Darker.
the Kill Bill vibes for sure. So I don't know if that is kind of what she's saying there, but yeah, I'm just excited. Whatever. Either way, I I understand everyone's got their opinions on it, but I think you and I are excited for it.
Yeah, this is the thing I'd love to hear people's opinions about as well down in the comments, in regards to your thoughts and opinions on the upcoming show that is The Acolyte. June 4th, we should mention, by the way, is the release date for the 2 episode premiere of this show, I believe. 25% of the show we get on the first night. Think about that.
Oh my, that makes me sad already.
Yeah, and as it relates to, The Acolyte, we are going to get a special first look at it during the 25th, the 25th anniversary release of The Phantom Menace, later in about 2 less than 2 months, on May the 4th this year, I wanna say,
Hmm.
is the release date for this. So if you, for some reason, are someone out there who has never seen episode 1, The Phantom Menace, or even, of course, if you are, the movie will be re-released in theaters for the 25th anniversary of the film, and just as I've stated, there will be a special first look of The Acolyte at the end of the movie. Now, this article was from an AMC site. Is this something that applies at all theaters, Joey? That's something I wasn't sure about, to be
Oh, that's
honest
a
with
good
you.
question. I mean, I'm assuming if this was an AMC theater type of deal, that would be my guess. But
Mm.
I
If
don't
that's
know
the
if we know for
case,
certain. Find your nearest
I'm
AMC.
we do have an AMC here. I am not an AMC frequenter. I prefer the other theater here in town.
Okay.
But I'll have to make an exception for this one. But yeah, the special first look at the new show, The Acolyte, comes out on May the 4th during the 25th anniversary release of Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Check it out in an AMC theater near you. And judging from the fact that we are almost over 25 minutes in and we haven't touched on viewer comments, let's go ahead and do that. We've got one from Aunt Vasuvi. Aunt Vasuvi says, "Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Joey. Thanks, Gibbo. May Mr. Dodson rest peacefully." This, of course, in reference to our last podcast where we talked about the voice actor for Salacious Crumb, I believe, if I remember correctly, recently passing away about 2.5 weeks ago. As much as I would love Tech to still be alive, that seems less likely now since we saw his broken goggles on the bridge of the Marauder. That suggests the body has been recovered, but who knows? They love surprising us. Try to nap before y'all stay up till all hours. We do actually. There is one, no, one or two times, I think just once, where I didn't sleep before we recorded at 2 a.m. Ooh, the next day was rough after that. So but but yes, thank you to Aunt Vasuvi for the comment, and we'll be talking a little bit more tech in today's episode, I'm sure. But we would
Speaking
love to
of,
see him again. Speaking of the question we asked everyone last week,
2 weeks ago.
uh, or 2 weeks ago, judging from the fact, yes, that we did not have a episode last week, was will Tech make a return during the last 10 episodes of the show? The folks on the YouTube community tab were split with a 50-50 vote, half saying yes, half saying no. Over on Twitter, it was a little bit more one-sided towards the no's, with 64% of the vote in the negative, and almost 36% of you over on Twitter saying that yes, he will return. So, another question we posed in conjunction with the first, based off of the episode 6 and 7 of Bad Batch, was who is the operative that we saw in those episodes? The choices we gave were Tech, Asajj, Cody, and Snoke. Perhaps over on X, or formerly known as Twitter, Tech was the overwhelming majority favorite with 64% of the vote, followed by a two-way tie between Cody and Snoke with 14% of the vote each.
Just wait. Just you wait. It gets better.
It gets better. Asajj was 7%. But over on YouTube, we can always count on the folks over on YouTube with their votes. 45% of the votes went to Tech, 0% to Asajj, 18% to Cody, and a whopping 36% of the vote went to Snoke. So, is the operative actually Snoke? You tell me, folks over on YouTube. That would be great. I don't know how I would feel about that if it actually happened, but be sure to vote in this week's polls on the YouTube community tab and over on X as well. Be on the lookout for each of those here in the coming day or two or so. And as I previously mentioned just a few moments ago, we've covered a lot of news today. So we are almost a half an hour in and still yet to discuss Bad Batch. So let's get to it. We've got 3 episodes to talk about today because we missed last week. Episodes 6, 7, and 8 were all pretty great in their own regard. We'll kind of touch on kind of our rankings of the 3 episodes at the end of today's podcast. But real briefly, before we talk in the specifics of episode 6, where we'll start, was there anything when you look kind of at an overlook, Joey, of sort of this middle portion of the final season of the Bad Batch that has stood out to you as maybe a favorite part, but just something that felt kind of like a part of the show that put it on the right path or felt necessary,
Mhm.
or a decision that was made by the or by the writers that felt like kind of a good direction to take the show that you've enjoyed in that regard.
I think Crosshair. I think
Mhm.
the story of Crosshair is what is going to drive the rest. Well, definitely drove this portion of the season,
Yeah.
and potentially the rest of the season, because he is the broken one at this point. He is the one that you were kind of not necessarily for last season, but now you want him to succeed because he's back with the crew. You kind of see this relationship between him and Omega really like blossoming and developing, and that is a pretty huge thing to see given it's him, given it's Crosshair, right? You don't think of all the warm fuzzies, but he does it in his own way. So I think that's the storyline that kind of grabs me most at this point of the season.
I am a 100% in the same boat. I am the biggest Crosshair fan out there. He is probably my favorite character in the show, I would
Mhm.
say. I think the best villains, not that he's a villain, but I think my favorite character archetype are the ones that are the villains or the antagonists, and then they have a redeemable quality. I mean, Vader is a great example of that, probably the best example of that. And while I'm not equating Crosshair to Vader, I think he kind of falls within that same character archetype of someone who was good, was offered something or enticed to kind of, going into that more morally evil side,
Right.
and then eventually found his way back to kind of what he previously knew as kind of the light side or the good side. So in that regard, he fits the character archetype of Vader, which is why I think I like him so much.
Right.
Apart from just kind of being a cool, smooth dude, he's
Yeah.
he's my favorite part of this show. So, yeah, I think his progression as a character has really blossomed in the 3rd season. You've kind of even seen him in the way he acts with Omega. I think
Right.
that's the way that it's most apparent, um, particularly in actually, I would argue that episode 8, while it might have been the weakest of these 3 episodes, probably does the most for his relationship with Omega. Maybe that's debatable, but I certainly felt that way after watching the
Hmm.
most recent week's episode. But, anyways, not to get too far ahead of myself with episode 8 discussion, should we just kind of work our way through episode 6 here to start us off?
Sure.
We open up with Captain Rex escorting Senator Singh from the planet Raxus, which, if you remember correctly, he was previously shown as a former CIS, the Confederacy of Independent Systems senator, who, after the fall of the Republic, the Empire then invaded his planet. So he kind of was in this weird position of sort of a holdover from the antagonists of the Clone Wars era, but now he's joining forces with Senator Chuchi, who we also saw in season 2 of Bad Batch. So someone who's fighting for the clones, someone who used to be part of the Confederacy, who are now kind of joining forces to fight their common enemy, the Empire. And so, they join up at this meeting along with Rex. But however, there was a clone, which is also called a shadow at some points by some of the other clones, who was sent to assassinate the senator. They later find a data puck and the electro capsule found on this captured assassin, which in season 2, they also captured another one of these shadow clones. And it was kind of like that shock pill, I guess the
Yeah.
equivalent of a cyanide pill, but in Star Wars
Yeah. It's
terms.
shocking to see that in Star Wars.
Yeah, I remember you and I when we saw that for the first time last season, we're like, "Oh, man, that's kinda dark for children." Not children's
For
television, but you know
animated.
what I right, yeah, it was like, Oh, what did we just watch? I'm surprised they showed that." But, if anyone tells you that Bad Batch, Clone Wars, or Rebels is a children's show, there's some stuff in there that you're like, "I definitely wouldn't show any kid under the age of 10 that." I don't know, but anyways. Um, the commando droid orders a new operative clone after the capture of the first one to go after the targets. And so Rex and Hauser find that one of the targets that was on the data puck recovered from the first operative is actually Omega. So, kind of the theme that we focus on for not just episode 6, but 7 and 8 as well, is the growing realization amongst the clones, particularly Hunter and Wrecker and Crosshair, that Omega is extremely important to the Empire for some reason. They know it's associated with M count, which is, again, hilarious that they refuse to say the word midichlorian. We talked about this a little bit. Uh, real quickly, what do you think about the fact that they're just like they're sticking to this M count thing? Do you like it, or would you prefer them to actually
I
just
think at
say
this point,
midichlorian?
I want them to keep doing this. I think just a little tongue in cheek, little wink, wink to the Star Wars fans, and be like, listen, we know what we did there with the midichlorians, so we're gonna call it M count for now.
Do you think I'm trying to think, who are they trying to appease by not saying midichlorian? Are they trying to appease all the people who hated on it 25 years ago? Or are they trying to appease, well, I don't know. Like, I don't have a problem with them saying
Right.
the word, I guess. I don't know. I think it's kind of a funny choice, but they've chosen it. They're sticking to it. I'd be
Yeah,
surprised if we even hear the word midichlorian at the rest of the season. Who
I
knows?
agree.
Um, so later, shortly thereafter in the episode, Echo gives Omega an energy crossbow, which was pretty cool to get to see her use that. Um, and then the Empire sends this new operative after the Bad Batch, and Omega after the Bad Batch and Omega, because of course she is the target that was found on the data puck. Hauser, one of the other clones who is part of this group that Rex has been forming slowly and it's growing in number, is questioning of Crosshair's loyalty based off some interactions they had when Crosshair was still this officer of the Empire, if you will, this operative in the Empire's army. And so he's naturally questioning of Crosshair's loyalty, and Crosshair being, not the friendliest guy in the world is probably not doing himself any favors
Right.
by getting on Hauser's good side or anything like that. So the new operative arrives, eliminates the first operative because they removed the shock thing from the operative's tooth to not allow him to use the shock pill, as we'll call it. Um, and then in the process also verifies that Omega is there to his superior, that clone commando. Which, by the way, I was going to ask you about this scene. I don't know if they've explicitly said this, but I think they definitely need Omega alive. And maybe that was
Yeah.
explicit by the
Yeah, they
fact that
did say that.
Hemlock
Yeah.
didn't shoot after the ship when she was
Mm-hmm.
gone. But um I don't know. I thought it was interesting that they eliminated the operative. I guess that just kind of shows the brutality of the Empire. Like the operatives
Right.
compromise, take him out. Even though we saw the operative was like, I'm not going to tell you anything. He was still
Yeah. Yeah.
eliminated by the other operative. So um, there is an explosion shortly thereafter as well, which separates the Bad Batch from the operative. A whole series of events ensue within that fight scene, and then the clone trooper led squadron to find Omega. So, um, this all in all, this first episode, which was titled Infiltration, the one that followed was Extraction. Was there anything that I didn't touch on with episode 6 that you wanted to touch base with before we move on to some of our discussion of episode 7? Because those two kind of go together before we discuss our in depth thoughts on the both of them together.
Right. I mean, the big thing here is the importance of Omega, kind of like what you said, and
Hmm.
we've known this for 3 seasons at this point, right? That there is something about Omega that is very, very important, and we have to protect her at all costs, you know. So I think that's a pretty cool thing to continue to see like throughout the series, but also at the same time, you we gotta find out, we gotta figure out what this is all about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree, and I think they did it well in these 2 episodes. I think they were well placed in this season. I think they emphasized that to the point where it was like, "Okay, now we have to find out in the next episode or 2, right?"
Right.
Um, so we'll get to that finding out or not finding out, after we cover episode 7, because episode 7, as we mentioned, was sort of the second half of episode 6 as they were paired together, titled Extraction. We find out at the beginning of the episode that everyone survived the blast, and there is shortly after a confrontation between the clone commander and the operative. The operative then chases the Bad Batch through the tunnel while the squadron blocks it in with explosives. The Bad Batch escapes on the ship, but is shot down by the operative. Who, by the way, we have lots of questions about who this operative is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess before we get to the other big reveal of this episode, I think probably the most popular theory is that the operative is Asajj. I've also seen theories that it might be like Cad Bane or
Okay.
Boba Fett.
Interesting.
Um, I'm not so sure about either of those. I think it makes the most sense having seen Asajj in the trailer that this is who the operative is. The only other thing I could see is it just being another old clone,
Mm-hmm.
Shadow clone. I think Shadow clone and Asajj are definitely the two biggest options there. But that was the major question we were left
Mm-hmm.
asking at the end of episode 7. And there's also, to kind of rewind to where we left off with the episode plot, There's this great quote by Crosshair in the middle where he says, "Loyalty meant something to me, but with the Empire, it didn't go both ways. I realized how disposable I was." And so, kind of an insight into Crosshair, and touching back with
Mhm.
what we were talking about earlier. These 3 episodes really felt, or really just season 3 in general, has felt like the Crosshair season.
Right.
It's kind of his journey back from the Empire to being a part of the Bad Batch, um, reacquainting with his buddies, but mostly kind of finding himself and finding his purpose in that, I would argue. And so probably one of the best Crosshair quotes of the show
Yeah.
so far, I would say.
Yeah, and I think that was, if I'm not mistaken, I think that was with Hauser that he was talking. You mentioned that too, but
Right.
um, and this speaks a lot to the clone, all the clones, that where they had been kind of led to, they were being led this entire time. They were kind of these soldiers, always meant to be these soldiers. And they touched a lot on it last season, where just like, well, what does it mean for them now? If they're not part of the war, if they've been decommissioned, what are you going to do with all of these clones that have been created throughout? And here's, a perfect example of somebody who not only with um, realizing that the Empire is not going to be as loyal to him as he is to it, but he's kind of getting decommissioned on his own way. His hand issues and everything like that. I think that's a real issue because at some point, same thing's going to happen to Wrecker. Same thing's going to happen to Hunter.
Hmm.
And as although they were created to be these type of war assets, they're people. And
Yeah.
so to have these actual feelings, these vulnerable feelings, really does speak to kind of how great this show is, because this is not something that you thought of when you watch Attack of the Clones or
Right.
Revenge of the Sith or anything. You didn't really think of this. That's why the Clone Wars animated series. That's why this show really kind of brought that to the forefront of discussions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it takes what the Clone Wars did to humanize clones and takes it just like even further, to the point where it's like, when you are stripped of what you thought your purpose was, what are you left with, and how do you find your new purpose? I mean, that's really what this show is.
Hmm.
It's so much. It's so much. I would argue more deep than anything. Let me think about this real quick. Is this the most deep show since the Disney acquisition? It's up there for me. I mean,
Hmm.
it's really about meaning and purpose and finding purpose in the midst of losing what you thought was your purpose. Um, which I again, Crosshair is the best example of that. And
Right.
not to give too much of a pitch for this show in the middle of our episode 7 plot synopsis, but anyways, to go back to what we were talking about, speaking of Crosshair, he gets in this really great fight with the operative in the middle of this episode. And I thought at any point he was just going to take off the mask of the operative and we'd
Right.
be like, oh my gosh, it's Asajj, or oh my gosh, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
whoever. Didn't happen in this episode. Wish it would have. But the big reveal of the episode that I alluded to earlier was that the clone commander giving orders is actually none other than Commander Wolf, which if you don't know who this is, he's been shown in the Clone Wars, but probably more importantly, shown in Rebels with Rex along with Gregor, I believe, as 3 surviving clones who were living together at the time. I wish I could remember what planet
Hmm.
the crew of the Ghost met up with them on. I don't know that off the top of my head. But there's a scene in Rebels where he is with Rex and Gregor.
Yes.
So he lets them go in this episode because of the conversation that he has with Hunter. And Rex, of course. And having said that, Wolf is going to join
Right.
Rex's force at some point. It's inevitable because we've literally seen them together, whatever it is, 20, 30 years after this. So kind of a cool tie in there. It's fun knowing his direction and seeing where he is now and kind of being able to say, "Oh, so this is how his path is going
Yeah.
and where he's gonna end up."
That was
So
a cool little addition to it. I didn't even, you and I talked about it a little bit before we recorded, and you're discussing that part. I'm like, oh yeah, now it all really makes more sense. I don't pretend to remember every single character and their storylines throughout all of Star Wars.
Mhm.
So to see this, to have seen Rebels and seen that happen there, obviously we know what his path is going forward.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a great quote when his commando trooper says, after he says we're going to let him go, the trooper says, "But sir, they're traitors." And he says, "But they're clones. We owe them that."
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So he's already got that inkling
Hmm.
of betrayal of the empire kind of growing within him, and we know it comes to fruition in the end. Just a matter of how long is it going to take him to get that far to join Rex's crew and that side. So the last thing we find out with this episode, of course, which leads into a big question we have moving into episode 8 that wasn't answered this week, sadly, was that the operative lives, and obviously leaving us with the question of who is the operative. And all in all, the crew does escape. Rex and Hunter talk and determine they need to find out why Omega is so important to the Empire. And you're left thinking, all right, we're gonna see like why she's important in the next episode. Wrong. We didn't get that in episode 8. We went on a whole episode side mission. Woo!
Hey.
No, I mean, again, at the top of the discussion, I mentioned that all 3 of these episodes were good in their own regard. I don't think, as a standalone episode for what it's worth, I think episode 8 was good. I enjoyed it. I think our initial ratings were lower than any episode of the season so far, but again, that's mainly because it just didn't feel like we accomplished much. Um, to summarize the episode real quickly, we touch base with Hunter and Wrecker needing to find out about these M count experiments and what they're all about, and as it relates to Omega. Fee is back and kind of comes through with this message that Class 1 bounty hunters are searching for M count targets for the Empire. And so, knowing this, Hunter and Wrecker decide to talk to Fennec Shand to gather more information on these M count targets. Meanwhile, Omega and Crosshair are staying on Pabu during this time, and they have lots of cool interactions throughout the episode as well. But all in all, what we're kind of being led to believe after a conversation we have with Finnick Shand is that Hunter and Wrecker are going to help Finnick get a bounty in exchange for information, aka we're going to go do this thing that has nothing to do with what we actually want to achieve, just so we can get to the thing we want, only to not really get to the thing we want in its entirety by the end of the episode, aka a side mission.
Yes. Where's
As
Sid? I
we
feel I feel Sid was involved in this
Yeah,
one.
yeah, as we've lovingly referred to so many of the Sid episodes in season 2 of this show. Um, yeah, for what it's worth. I mean, they go on this mission, they're in this swampland down in the bayou surrounded by
The
mines.
Bayou.
There's this alligators trying to eat them. There's this praying mantis guy who Finnick is after, and they go through this hideout and capture him, and and one of Joey's notes in our podcast notes is the praying mantis thing chittered entirely too much during through the battles. There was this chittering noise going on the whole time.
It was freaking me
Um,
out.
yeah. By the end of the episode, Finnick is like, I don't have what you want with me, but I'll get it. But thank you for helping me, but I don't have it now. I'll get it to you. You have to trust
So,
me.
that was so frustrating.
I was
I
like,
love.
are you kidding
Here's the
me?
thing. I love Fennec Shand. You know this. They did my girl wrong to to put her in this role,
Yeah.
because I mean they're I just feel I mean the way that she was introduced into this with was it Nala Say, I can't remember exactly who it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
that had commissioned her in order to get Omega in the first place. That whole storyline was great. Now to just kind of throw this episode at her, I just feel like they just did Ming Na Wen, the voice actress, wrong. Oh, and actually, who actually plays Fennec Shand in live
Mhm.
action as well. So to see that, I was a little bit disappointed. I did love having Fennec Shand back in the Bad Batch, but I really wish they would have used her a little bit better as and not be because this is an annoying. I'm sorry, it was annoying like storyline that we had to go through this only to get nothing at the end of it. So what was the whole point of it anyway? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I want to conclude our episode 8 discussion talking about Crosshair and Omega, but before we get to it, kind of to sum up on some of the Finnick Shan stuff. I think this whole episode would have been better if they were like, um, you know, rather than going on this mission, her not having it readily available, we could have gotten to whatever the plot of episode 9 is going to be simply by them going to her saying, yes, it's like, give me credits, I'll give you the
Yeah.
info. And then, 2 minutes later, we're with the info that she's
Yeah.
given them for the credits. I mean, it just felt like, why are we going on this mission? I mean, maybe it'll come back around and it'll make a little bit more sense later, but I think we could have got to where we ended at episode 8, like 5 minutes into the episode if we wanted
Yes.
to give more meaningful time to, you know, screen time with Asajj or
Yeah.
just some other method of importance
Right.
of information being acquired about Omega and the M count stuff.
And
But
I think as viewers, watching this is the last season, man. Like every
yeah.
single minute counts, and if you give us anything that because we can even possibly consider as filler, we're gonna jump on it. And I feel like this is we didn't need to go out and buy you. I mean, it was fun. It was fine. But I think Fennec had some one-liners, that little zingers at him, which were good. But all in all, like you said, this could have been a 5 minute. You could have just added 5 minutes into the next episode, and we could have gotten exactly where we were here.
Yeah. All that being said, do you think the person Finnick was talking to at the end of the episode, I'm hoping that's Asajj
I
Ventress.
would think so. I would think that that's who because, and here's the thing. I wonder if we never saw Asajj in the trailer. Like where our thought process would be right now, because all
Right.
we're doing is waiting for her. Every single like person, someone in a helmet, someone off screen, it's Asajj. It's got to be Asajj. So I almost think that might have been a bit of a disservice to us, because we're constantly
Yeah.
just looking for Asajj, in the corners, in the shadows. And
Right.
I think that kind of takes away from the experience a little bit. I don't think either way. I don't know if we would have liked this episode, because right now this episode just prolonged the amount of time until we have to wait to see Asajj. That's what this episode felt like. But if we never knew that she was going to be a part of the season, would we have those same thoughts? Would we have liked this episode a little bit more or a little bit less? I'm not quite sure. But uh, having that information that Asajj will be in this season, this was more of just like, okay, we're just waiting a full week to see her at least for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was saying at the end of the episode when we reacted to it live, which by the way, Julie and our live reaction to episode 8 is already up and available on the YouTube Hoth Hangout YouTube channel. Um, but that's what I was saying kind of right after our live reaction is there's all this effort in the episode to like mask the voice of the person Finnick is talking to for there to be secrecy around it. And I'm like, if we already know Asajj is coming,
Yeah.
why not just like have her voice be like the one that comes across when
Right.
Finnick is speaking or either that or just leave her out of the trailer and then
Yes, exactly.
leave the secret voice on. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
If we know it's coming, it kind of takes away some of the surprise of it all. But it'll still be
Absolutely.
really cool to see her when it finally does happen. Just a matter of when now. Hopefully next week. We'll see. But um oh, and then last thing, I wanted to circle back to this is that there's these kind of this interlude of portions of the episodes where it's going back and forth between the mission and then with Crosshair and Omega on Pabu. Oh, and Bacha. Don't want to
Gotcha.
forget Bacha. Yeah, is that Omega is teaching Crosshair meditation. Crosshair has gone through these tests with AZ, and AZ's like, "There's nothing medically wrong with you. I don't know what's wrong." And so Omega's like, "Here, let me try that." Later on in the episode, she's like, "Let me try this. Just like relax, calm." She's
Trust me.
teaching him meditation. Yeah, trust. It's something that Crosshair is not very good at. Uh, so it's really cool to see that bond forming with them
Mm-hmm.
um, leaps and bounds throughout this season, and I think was done beautifully in this episode as well. Which is why I mentioned earlier I liked their relational dynamic in this episode, maybe better than any in the season so far. It's something small, but it's like, Crosshair can't figure out why his hand is shaking. Medically, it doesn't make any sense. There's no answers. And Omega is kind of, taking it within herself to say,
Right.
just, you know, take a second, trust me, relax. There's an exchange of conversation when she's teaching him about meditation, and he's like, where did you learn this? He's kind of, can see him like internally wanting to question, but then him coming to the point where he's like, all right, I'm just gonna trust. I'm gonna do what she's telling me because that's like the person I'm trying to become. You know what I mean? So all that
Right.
to say, Crosshair number one fan over here.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. Um, so that's pretty much the synopsis of the past 3 episodes. I know we kind of, flew through that, and shockingly, we're still, under the hour mark. I highly doubt we will be by the end of today's podcast episode, but, for what it's worth, was there a, particular part of the final episode or really any of the episodes, that caught your eye
Mhm.
as your favorite moment? I know off the bat you mentioned Crosshair being kind of one of your favorite parts of these 3
Yeah.
episodes. And then maybe in addition to that, if you had to rank the 3 episodes, how would you go about doing that?
Yeah, I think definitely this scene that we have here on the video version of the podcast with the two of them meditating into to the sunset, with Batcher kind of along the side, probably doing the same thing. I think that was probably my favorite part of the three episodes, kind of just seeing that. Although maybe we say that that was maybe the overall most weak episode out of the three. I would say I would rank them like 6, 7, 8. That's probably where I would
Mm,
rank those. But one thing I did want to mention, and I want to hear your thoughts on this.
mhm.
We're trying to figure out this operative, right? And
Yeah.
the and the last episode, in episode 7, kind of once again is still alive, and they're still surviving. So when I went back and looked and watched the episodes again when I was making the notes, saw something kind of interesting. Um, there's a lot of mirroring between the operative and Crosshair,
Mm,
because if you see just the way that the operative is kind of working, the way he kind of talks, the way the way they're in battle, there's a lot of like sharpshooter type of angles, and a lot of that footage there. When he takes out
mhm,
the other operative, from a long sniper shot.
mhm.
So, new theory, I think that operative has something to do with Crosshair, where
Mm,
maybe the loss of use of his hand has something to do with this operative. Whether
mm.
one of the failed experiments, or one of the, because remember when the first operative came in and they had captured him. When he saw Crosshair, he was like, "Oh, I know you." Like they knew each other. You know what I mean? There was
Right.
there was a connection of some sort, and like he even said, like, if you want to ask anybody, you should ask him. You know, so there's just a lot of, and at the end of episode 7, it was Crosshair versus the operative. It wasn't anybody else. So I wonder if there's something there. Maybe there's a little bit of Crosshair in that particular operative. Is it a leap? Yeah, probably. But I think that that parallel was there throughout these episodes.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it's too much of a leap. I mean, I know we were really, like, hoping for the idea that maybe this operative is a, like, mind warped version of tech or
Hmm.
whatever. I would argue that your proposal now is probably more likely than,
Right.
like, tech being brought back from the brink of death and turned into this operative, that somehow they've, extracted Crosshair's DNA, and as a byproduct of that, his hand is shaking, and maybe there's this other, even if it's not like a genetic clone of him, somehow if this person has been, enhanced by some of Crosshair's ability by being given some of his blood. I don't really know. I feel like again, that seems at this point in time, I'm more willing to say your idea seems more likely than it being tech, sadly, because I was really wanting it to be tech.
Right.
I just feel like the longer and longer we go into the season, I'm getting, more and more clues that that tech is probably just gone permanently,
Right, right.
as much as I hate to say that. So, um, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a far-fetched theory by any means. I think it could very much happen realistically. So, and then you mentioned your ranking of the episodes would be 6, 7, 8. I definitely would agree that 8 was my least favorite, although it did have some pretty special moments, as we mentioned, between Crosshair and Omega. I think 7 would be slightly higher for me than 6, only because I really liked the scene at the end with Wolf, the
That's
exchange
true.
of kind of coming to the point. Well, first of all, I just love seeing Wolf in it. Once I, like, realized that, "Oh, this is, like, who it is," and then, therefore, the exchange between him and Rex and Hunter at the end, kinda, saying the line about "They're clones, we owe them that." I just really liked that moment in the episode and probably put it just slightly above 6 for me. So for me, it was probably 7, then 6, then 8, but yeah, 6 and 7 are almost interchangeable
Right.
because they were essentially one episode, so pretty great episodes in that regard. But let us know as well in the comments, how would you rank episodes 6, 7, and 8 if you've had to? I always think it's funny at the end of our pods. I feel like I've probably asked people their thoughts on like 5 or 6 different questions throughout. And I'm like, how many things am I asking people to do? I don't know. But anyways, um, well, that concludes our discussion of this past 3 Bad Batch episodes. And we did it in a relatively timely
I thought
manner,
we did pretty good.
not bad, not bad. Which leads us into our question of the week that we teased at the top of the pod. Will we see Asajj Ventress in episode 9 next week? Is she the person Fennec Shan was contacting on the holocom? Let us know your thoughts. There's it again, me asking another question down in the comments below or over on the socials. Which also leads us into our reminder that on next week's episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast, episode 74, our discussion will center primarily around our recap and synopsis and review of episode 9 of season 3 of The Bad Batch, which comes out in about 6 days' time at the time of this recording, 5 days' time at the time of the release of this episode next week. So be on the lookout for episode 9 and our reaction and recap to it shortly thereafter. As a reminder, all of our reactions do go up typically the morning after for each of the Bad Batch episodes. So be on the lookout for those on the Hoth Hangout YouTube channel as well. And having said all of that, if you're not yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, check us out there. We are closing in on 400 subscribers. So thank you to the 393 of you who are subscribed there. We appreciate you very much. You can check out the video version of the podcast and all of our reactions to the newest Star Wars shows there. You can also contact us via email at hothangout@gmail.com with your Star Wars related questions or otherwise. And we'd love to showcase them here on the pod. The Hoth Hangout podcast is findable anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple and Spotify. And if you're listening on a platform that allows you to leave a review, leave a 5-star review on the pod. We would very much appreciate it. And it does also allow others to more easily discover the podcast as well. Hoth Hangout is also findable on the socials, whether it be Instagram, TikTok, or X at Hoth Hangout on each of those platforms. And as we've mentioned the past couple weeks, we do have a newly established Hoth Hangout community Discord server. If you're interested in checking that out and joining a community of like-minded Star Wars fans, the link for the Discord will be in the show notes of the audio and video version of the podcast. Joey, we've had quite the episode today. We've covered all sorts of news, all sorts of discussion around the last 3 episodes of The Bad Batch. Any last closing thoughts on anything we've discussed or anything Star Wars related or otherwise?
I mean, we did a really good job under like just over an hour, so give us props for that. Now, I to see where this is headed, the last episode of the Bad Batch may have been, a little bit of a letdown in comparison to the rest of it, but it still has a great path to a great ending of this season, and I just can't wait to see that. And we've got the Acolyte coming in June. In May we get to go watch the Phantom Menace in the theater. Star Wars is here. Star Wars is going to be around for a while, and I hope people are able to enjoy it. We talked a little bit about how we got a little bit of negative comments, negative vibes going into the Acolyte trailer. I just, I truly do hope that as a community, as a fandom, that the fans will overwhelmingly enjoy what Star Wars is bringing to the table. And I could say this year after year after year.
Yeah, yeah, well put. Um, yeah, I'm super excited for the Acolyte. Lots to be excited for the end of Bad Batch. Hopefully, we'll see Asajj soon. Joey and I might be playing some Battlefront Classic together soon. That's something we're gonna be looking forward to. So, anyways, it's been a great episode. Oh, last thing I was gonna say, I feel like hey, Gibbo, if you're listening, we need a leniency clause for the 1 hour mark. We had an extra 2 episodes to talk about this week. Okay, Gibbo, we need a leniency clause somewhere. Under 70 minutes is not bad, though, I will say. So, anyways. Well, and again, thank you to Gibbo for producing the show video and assets, who we have trusted to teach each of us, Joey and I, meditation in that process as well. So, well, shout out to George Lucas. Shout out to Dave Filoni. Shout out to Bayou infested swamps. I don't know I don't know about that one, but anyways, thank you all for listening so much to this week's episode of the Hoth Hangout podcast. Join us every Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern for the newest episodes. And again, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate each and every single one of you. We'll catch you in next week's episode covering episode 9, season 3 of The Bad Batch. And until then, may the Force be with you.